Book 4, Lex Eldor. The way to accept fate and remain free is by choosing to follow your destiny on your own terms. Lex Eldor. God of the Physical. While Dikeldor and Darkfire were earning the trust of the Realm Lords, Darth Maul was moving up the ranks of the Limbo Imperial military. He eventually got assigned to the Special Investigations Department and was sent to explore the strangest occurrences in Limbo. He frequently found himself studying these phenomena alone, and did not always report back everything he found. First and foremost, Darth Maul desired power for himself. On one of his solitary investigations, he stumbled upon a hidden lesser realm. Within, he met a being of power and knowledge beyond his understanding. It claimed to be the originator of the physical aspects of the cosmos, and called itself Tezzencruel. Darth Maul was unaware of what an Illithel was, but he soon learned. He kept Tezzencruel's existence a secret and created a telepathic link to him. Though Tezzencruel remained imprisoned in the lesser realm, he could see through Darth Maul's eyes and experience what he experienced. In exchange, he spoke in Darth Maul's mind and provided him with knowledge and understanding rivaling that of Dikeldor and Darkfire. Darth Maul came to understand what Dikeldor had become. He also learned about the Akujin, as he was beginning to become one himself. Lastly, he learned about a prophecy older than any other recorded in the cosmos. The imagery Darth Maul saw was similar to the murals Dikeldor had seen when he first learned about the Illithel. He saw how the Illithel had created the Ancients and Ettins. He learned their connection. He saw their imprisonment and the imprisonment of the Illithel. Then he saw the prophecy of the Ancient with the Ettin inside him, freeing the Illithel. Along with these visions, Darth Maul heard Tezzencruel's interpretation of the prophecy.
In the end days of the cosmos born of many Illithels, an evolved ancient with another evolved ancient living inside his arm will free the slumbering gods and bring about the destruction of the cosmos.
Darth Maul could not help but wonder if this referenced him with Baratonis in his arm. Tezzencruel laughed at Darth Maul's assumption. He told him he definitely had a part to play, but there was another prophecy which few had seen. He believed both prophecies had to be fulfilled for the true end to be reached. The second prophecy was as follows.
The first of the ancients to take on a mortal host will find himself one day trapped in the most powerful immortal body ever known to his cosmos. With that body as a vessel, he will eat his own soul and become a fusion of man and ancient. The power gained by the ancient will become too much for him to sustain, and this will drive him to seek out his true destiny. He will eat his brothers to become the first Illithel born of mortal flesh. This abomination will have all the creative power of an Illithel, but the destructive mind of a man. Thus his power will bring about the destruction of his cosmos.
Darth Maul was confused. This prophecy was definitely talking about Dikeldor, but the other did not seem to be. Tezzencruel assured him there was a way to make sure both prophecies were Dikeldor's to bear. He could free Darth Maul from any tie to the end times, and also free him from his ties to Baratonis. Darth Maul was enamored with the idea of being free of his possessed arm, and saw much power in working with Tezzencruel. He made a pact with him to follow his plan, and soon became a full Akujin as a result. He also soon learned that Ellie had worked for Tezzencruel long ago, as had Gas. It seemed Tezzencruel was working through many others who Darth Maul and Dikeldor frequently interacted with, leading them both to an inevitable event not yet revealed to them. Finally, after Dikeldor and Darkfire recreated the center and were trusted by the Realm Lords, Darth Maul realized where the event was destined to take place. Darkfire instructed Darth Maul that he wanted him to undergo the Great Trials and become a Realm Lord. With Dikeldor as one of the headmasters, Darth Maul saw how they would meet again once he went to the school for training. It occurred to him that everything seemed too perfect, but he moved forward anyway. He would not let Lord Tezzencruel down. He started the trials with plans to become a Realm Lord and face Dikeldor. He mastered the trials faster than any other student. He arrived in the Prime Realm and strode toward his inevitable destiny. Call of the Apprentices. Dikeldor appeared before Shakarok and faced off against him in combat. Once the battle had gone on long enough, Dikeldor revealed he had been testing Shakarok to make sure he was ready. He then requested he start the Great Trials, after which he would come to the Realm Lord School and train under him to become a Realm Lord. Shakarok did not understand Dikeldor's interest in him. He had no memory of the previous timelines and of how close they had been in them. He did, however, recognize who Dikeldor really was, and the bond the two had from before recorded history. He underwent the trials for what felt like lifetimes, then emerged in the Prime Realm and made his way to the Realm Lord School. Once there, he was assigned a roommate from the same original realm as him, as was the custom whenever possible. His roommate was Darth Maul. Darth Maul fancied himself the apprentice of Darkfire, while many called Shakarok the apprentice of Dikeldor. Dharmal delighted in bragging about how quickly he had completed the trials, while it had taken Shakarok longer than average. The other students of the same class as Dharmal and Shakarok looked up to Dharmal as a natural, while looking on Shakarok as only being there because of Dekildor's request. Even so, Shakarok harbored no ill will toward Dharmal, and did his best to remain cordial. Vala, who had now aged her body to its early 20s, was one of the few who saw the value in Shakarok. She was working as Dekildor's personal assistant, and was now a fully trained Realm Lord beyond the power of most others. She knew what it meant to be chosen as apprentice to Dekildor. The longer she got to know Shakarok, the more she found she liked him. This caught Dekildor's attention, and he was not sure how to react to it. In a previous timeline, Shakarok and Nicole had ended up together, birthing his grandson. Was it his right to try to force that birth again, or should he simply let this new romance play out? Dekildor also found himself occupied with the romantic escapades of Dharmal. Though Dekildor was happily involved with Kara, his former love, Doomsday, had recently arrived at the school. She showed great interest in Dharmal, who honestly reminded Dekildor of himself during his original time training to become a Realm Lord. Dharmal was reciprocating her affection, and a romance was budding there. He knew he had no right to interfere with Doomsday and Dharmal seeing each other. He was in love with Kara, but he still loved Doomsday as well. His loyalty was now to Kara, and Doomsday did not know him as she had in the previous timelines. He had to let Doomsday go, but it was hard to see her with Dharmal. Dekildor reminded himself that, though he was an Illithel now, a god to some, he was still not entitled to dictate the will of others. His past few years as a headmaster had led him to this understanding. To be what he had become was an honor requiring discipline and responsibility. This understanding came mostly due to training he was undergoing with Darkfire. Darkfire was trying to master a means of teaching others to become a Valant. To do so, he was teaching the other headmasters in their spare time. Though none had fully become a Valant, as Darkfire had, they were developing abilities specific to this new breed of Realm Lord, and Darkfire had hopes this would lead to a positive training curriculum. Dekildor was ahead of the others in this training. Dekildor was also spending time with Darkfire and Bylon by themselves. He was attempting to teach them the ways of a being of chaos, the ways of both the Akujin and Keepers. This training was working well for them, especially Bylon. Dekildor wondered if the temporal power Bylon had consumed during Uzulkree's defeat had turned him into something close to an Illithel himself. He wondered if he may be able to find a way to teach Bylon to become one. Secretly, the three were also conducting experiments to understand the specifics of what it meant to be an aberration. Bylon primarily led these experiments, but the other headmasters had an interest as well. They volunteered to be transformed if a stable method could be discovered. Darkfire liked this plan, as it could lead to all the headmasters existing across time. Such a force could restart the Realm Lord School and Center in any timeline. The other headmasters each had their own secret projects as well, all with the overall goal of increasing the potency of the Realm Lord training or the efficiency of the center. Their interest came mostly from the revelation by Darkfire and Dekildor that deities, living weapons, and mage lords existed. Prior to their joining, the Realm Lords had been unaware of such beings. While each headmaster worked their secret projects and taught the highest level classes, the other instructors focused on training the new Realm Lords. By the end of his first year, Shakarok had finally proven himself to his classmates. Dharmal had continued to shine as head of the class. The two were grouped together as outstanding pupils, and it was no longer questioned why Darkfire and Dekildor had selected them. Vala and Shakarok were exclusively dating, as were Dharmal and Doomsday, but Dekildor and Kara were hitting some rough spots in their relationship. The primary area of concern for Kara was that Dekildor was an aberration and she was not. He could exist across multiple timelines, smoothing over fights she would never remember they had. She just had to assume whatever she remembered was how their relationship was, and it made her question everything. As Darkfire and Bylon completed a prototype for a device to turn individuals into aberrations, Kara volunteered to use it. Dekildor did not want her to, but she did anyway. She became the first test subject of the device, which worked perfectly. As memories of all the past timelines entered her mind, Kara found the opposite of what she had expected. She thought she would find moments of infidelity where Dekildor had returned to Doomsday, but no such times happened. What she discovered was that Dekildor had never manipulated her, even when it would have been convenient or seemingly harmless. He respected and loved her more than she had realized, and she loved him more than ever for it. She embraced Dekildor, telling him that they could stay together forever now. She truly felt this was what she wanted now that she knew the truth about him, but Dekildor was not happy. He said she did not understand the sacrifice she had just made by becoming an aberration. He hated feeling responsible for that decision. Kara refused to accept Dekildor's moping. She informed him that she would have wanted this even if it had driven them to break up. To be an aberration to her was something she had to become. It was beyond their relationship. Dekildor accepted this, and the two mended their relationship. Soon they were happier than ever, and Tekildor even found he no longer worried about Doomsday. Meanwhile, the other headmasters each used the device to become aberrations. Now, as Darkfire had foreseen, they could rebuild their school no matter what the future held. Flator's Revenge. Flator Bolavista II had always hated the organized Realm Lords and their school. He felt that individuals should find the path of the Realm Lords on their own, or they did not deserve the great power. This view had caused him to avoid them, even though he was a Realm Lord, but it was not enough to drive him to destroy them. When Tekildor was brought on as a headmaster of the school, Flator's hatred intensified. He remembered how Tekildor had killed all of his allies and devoured their souls, forcing him to flee for his life. The Ettin formerly within Tekildor haunted his nightmares ever since. He saw Siegfried's expression of horror in his last moments. Now, Flator wanted to destroy the Realm Lords and their new school. He wanted to take everything from Tekildor and then annihilate him. He spent years planning and working on his revenge. In blood-red armor, he strode to the gates of a massive prison complex. It had been built by the Mage Lords long ago and could not be opened from the inside. Within were thousands of living weapons. Being so strong, their bodies were nearly indestructible. Trapping them inside had been the Mage Lords' last resort in a war that nearly had wiped them all out. Flator produced a magic key, the result of years of searching, and opened the gate. He walked in to find the living weapons, giants and monstrous individuals, fighting each other as a form of training. They stopped and saw the gate open. He called to them, asking who among them was leader, and the biggest of them stepped forward. Flator challenged him for supremacy, knowing that to defeat the leader was to become the leader. The leader agreed to the challenge. Flator disappeared and reappeared close to his enemy. He performed flying spin kicks and other maneuvers, but they seemed insubstantial in the combat. He struck with his sword and it shattered as it hit the body of the living weapon. The leader grabbed Flator by the throat and slammed him to the ground, cracking the concrete. Flator's armor glowed and red vines of blood shot out of it, wrapping around the giant of a man. The giant screamed as his body was shrunk to the size of a grain of sand and absorbed into a red stain on the armor's surface. Flator stood and looked at the others and said, "Who else challenges?" The army of living weapons kneeled to Flator, and he led them out of the prison. A deity who called himself Krylos, god of decimation, observed Flator's actions. He transported himself to the school of the Realm Lords and requested to speak with Headmaster Tekildor. He and Tekildor had been in talks to try to ally the deities and Realm Lords, and had grown to be friends in the process. Krylos knew much of Tekildor's history, and could easily guess Flator's target. After Krylos relayed what he had seen, Tekildor alerted the school and alarms filled the air. The Realm Lords prepared themselves and moved out into the open. As they did, they saw the rays of the morning sun lifting over the nearby hills. Coming over the hills along with them were Flator and the living weapons. The barrier around the center and the Realm Lord school was more powerful than even the barrier around Castle Darkfire. The living weapons lined it with seemingly no way to advance. The Realm Lords waited within the barrier, staring through it, into the eyes of their would-be attackers. Flator lifted his arm, and an explosive beam of light shot out of the sun behind him. It slammed into the barrier and completely obliterated it. The living weapons charged forward, clashing directly with the Realm Lords, battering and breaking them with deadly blows. Tekildor and Krylos rushed Flator. The other headmasters cleared the way for them. Darkfire flew to the tallest tower where he could overlook the fight. He pulled living weapons into pockets of reality and transported them far away from the fight, lowering their numbers quickly. Kara commanded the other Realm Lords as they struck back against the living weapons. Krylos fired an immense blast of explosive energy at Flator. It completely enveloped him, obscuring him from view. As the explosion dissipated, Flator appeared unharmed. His blood-red armor seemed to have absorbed the blast entirely. Doomsday, who had been moving toward the front lines, halted as she sensed the power of Flator's armor. Her ability to see beyond sight told her all she needed to know about it. Tekildor and Krylos rushed Flator again, attacking him in the sky. Flator swung his glowing white sword into Krylos, and it sent him plummeting back to the ground. Though Krylos was the god of decimation, Flator's sword was an Elfar blade. It rendered the bodies of deities completely numb as it struck. Krylos was not only down for the moment, he was down for the rest of the battle. With Flator distracted, Tekildor struck him firmly in the chest with the demon edge, firing black electricity through the blade. But the armor absorbed the energy of the strike and the electricity. Red vines shot out of the armor like tentacles, flying around Tekildor as if to enwrap him. Tekildor felt himself flung through the air by some force. When he managed to regain his composure, he found that Doomsday was now hovering in his place. She had sensed this coming attack, flew at top speed, and pushed Tekildor clear of it. The vines pulled Doomsday into Flator's armor, shrinking her to the size of a pea and squishing her into a small stain on the armor's chest plate. Dekildor's eyes widened. He let out a horrific scream that did not resemble the sounds of any being known to the battlefield. As Flator looked at him, he thought for a moment he could see a being made of darkness and stars in front of him, with long black tentacles writhing around it. It was more frightening than anything he had ever seen, even the Yetin he had formerly faced off against. Though Dekildor and Doomsday were not together anymore, his love for her was as strong as ever. Here, now, she had sacrificed herself for him. Even without their past known to her, she had still died because of him. Dekildor's mind could barely stand it. He looked deep into Flator with spite and hatred. The black tentacles on Dekildor's back became visible to everyone. Gravity in the area intensified. The light dimmed. The sky seemed to bleed inky blackness.
Now,
Tezzenkruel said inside Daramal's mind.
This is the moment we've been waiting for.
Daramal did not hesitate. He recalled the plan he and Tezzenkruel had been working on since his arrival at the school. He flew at top speed back into the main hall and to his room. Shakarok watched as Daramal fled the battlefield and could not help but wonder what his friend was up to. He pursued in hopes of lending assistance. Meanwhile, high in the air, Dekildor's blade slashed through the straps of Flator's armor, and it fell to the ground. His blade slammed into Flator's sword and snapped it in half. Flator flew backward, but Dekildor caught him by the leg and pulled him toward him. He slid the demon edge slowly through his chest. A desire to consume Flator filled Dekildor, and he realized it was his only chance of saving Doomsday. He wrapped his tentacles around Flator and pulled him closer, driving the demon edge further through him. Flator again saw a glimpse of the dark monster within Dekildor and screamed out, "What the hell are you?" "You're God," Dekildor said, wrenching the demon edge inside Flator and pulling his soul from his body. As Flator's knowledge and past became Dekildor's, he knew exactly how the armor had been created and how it functioned. He landed hard on the ground next to the armor, placed a hand on it, and shattered it. Every being it had ever consumed was released and returned to full size. Most of the beings within were dead, though a few had survived. Dekildor lifted Doomsday's mangled corpse. She seemed beyond saving. The remaining living weapons halted their attack and kneeled to Dekildor. He had defeated their leader. The army was his to command now. The battle of the Realm Lords and living weapons ended, but Dekildor did not care. He was focused entirely on Doomsday. He refused to let her die here.